Speaking well in public has to become a craft before it can become an art form. This is actually good news for neophytes. It means the skill can be easily mastered, and you can tweak your public performance and presentation, that final 10%, at your own pace over the years to come. You will become comfortable with public speaking. You will deliver terrific value to your audience. You will be able to speak in public at the drop of a hat. Here's how. 1. Know your subject inside out. Let's go back to sometime between 234 BC and 149 BC to ancient Rome. That's when Cato the Elder uttered wise words speakers still follow today. Grasp your subject. The words will follow. Cato the Elder was one of the best-known public orators of his day, yet he started out not as a member of the Roman nobility, but as a humble farmer near the village of Tusculum. But he quickly attracted the notice of more powerful men. He became known for his emotionally ringing speeches, one of which was so stirring it had been credited with leading directly to the destruction of Rome's enemy, the mighty city of Carthage. Cato also spoke from the heart. While being perfectly aware of traditional oratorical tricks and techniques, he touched the emotions of his listeners. He understood them. And most of all, he understood his subject. But remember, knowing your subject inside out doesn't mean you have to be perfect and deliver every fact. It just allows you flexibility, and the more flexible you feel in summing up an audience and deciding what they need to know, the more confident you'll be. Understanding your subject does not mean delivering perfect performances. 2. Practice, practice, and practice again. There's a wonderful story about evangelist Billy Graham. He knew in his heart from an early age that God wanted him to preach. While he was at Bible college, he used to row himself out to a little island and practice on the alligators. Although there's no record of what the alligators thought, I took a page from his book when first beginning to speak in public. There were no alligators handy, so I practiced on my dog, who made the most attentive audience. She was delighted I was talking directly and warmly to her, and I was encouraged by her attentiveness. Silly, but surprisingly effective. 3. Start small. You really don't have to rush out and speak at a 600-person convention. Simply volunteering to introduce a speaker at your local women's business group or introducing a special guest who is going to give a presentation by audio on your website are great starts. Tell a story to your children instead of reading it. Make sure it's one you know well and have read many times. Make short speeches to the family dog, especially if it's a large, laid-back breed. And if you want a really tough audience, try it out on the family cat. 4. Give yourself permission to be nervous. The opposite of giving yourself permission to be nervous is to strive for perfection. And while that sounds like a noble goal, placing a demand for instant perfection on yourself is not only unrealistic, it will make you focus on yourself instead of on your audience. You need to be thinking about what you're giving them, what you want them to enjoy, and what you want them to take away from your speech. 5. Accept physical symptoms. Butterflies in your stomach and a racing heartbeat is nothing more than a simple physical reaction. The old fight or flight instinct that your amygdala, the automatic primal part of your brain that releases hormones, lets loose. As you start to speak, these physical symptoms will go away. 6. Beware of all or nothing thinking. It's amazing how many times we get ourselves all worked up by bludgeoning ourselves with words such as always or never. They usually come out in statements such as, I always mess things up, or I'll never remember all the points I want to make. Make sure your self-talk is positive. Substitute, this is great practice, or my audience really wants to hear about this, instead of your usual negative refrains. 7. Join Toastmasters. This organization's sole purpose is to help and support people learning to speak in public. You'll find almost everyone is in the same boat as you, and everyone is friendly and really wants you to succeed. You'll end up making so many short speeches, it will easily become second nature before you've ever appeared in public. And there seems to be a chapter of Toastmasters in almost every city. More on that later. 8. Learn your speech by heart. Practice it out loud. Then forget it. Seriously. Make a note of the high points on an index card. These can be single words or little cartoons listed in the order you want to present them. Use this skeleton only to make sure you're covering everything. A typical speech skeleton might look like this. Making a business plan. Why have one? Flexible? It grows with your business. How detailed does it have to be? Who is it for? You plus bank if you're borrowing. Do you need a lawyer? Where to find templates? Importance of checking where you're at and updating your business plan. Follow it. In our example above, you're going to speak on the subject of making a business plan, and here are the points you need to cover in order. If you know your subject really well, that's all you need to glance at your skeleton in the event you find yourself suddenly freezing up to set you back on track. Tip: be sure to take a bottle of water on stage with you, or put it by your computer if you're speaking online. Practicing your speech out loud is so important. I'm going to repeat it for our next point. You'll see why. 9. Practice your speech out loud. There's nothing like actually speaking out loud to lay bare awkward phrases. You'll trip over them, get tongue-tied or stammer or catch yourself saying, every time if they're hiding there on the page in plain sight. If you find yourself tripping, verbally stumbling over a phrase every time you reach it, it's a sure sign it doesn't work. It's a clunky phrase, so rewrite it. 10. Always focus on what happens next. When you're writing your skeleton, what you're really doing is laying out reminders of what happens next. If you do find yourself freezing up, with a mind that is totally blank, there's no need to panic. Simply take a sip of water while quickly reviewing in your mind what happens next. This may not sound dynamic and exciting, but keeping the what happens next principle firmly in mind is the best public speaking tip I ever learned, and has saved my reputation and my sanity many times. Glossophobia, and why you don't have to have it. The fear of public speaking is called glossophobia. The term originates from the Greek glossa, which means tongue, and phobos, fear. People who have glossophobia have it for one reason and one reason only. They are focusing on themselves. And all the messages are negative and anxiety-based, common fears. I'm going to freeze and forget everything halfway through. What if my voice sounds squeaky? What if they don't like me? No one will ever listen to me again if I mess this up. I'm going to throw up. Notice that every thought, 1, makes a supposition that is based on speculation, not fact. 2, is all about me. Focusing on your message and or your audience works a lot better. Gathering your audience. Famed Irish storyteller Alice Cain had a trick she called gathering her audience. She would stand before them and wait until complete silence fell, searching out what seemed like every member with her eyes. When the chattering faded away and she had their complete attention, she would begin her story in a soft, quiet voice. She was the opposite of theatrical, a little old lady in a print dress and shawl who stood with her hands folded primely in front of her. Yet I will never forget the first time I heard her speak. She told traditional Irish legends, the tales of the Wondersmith. As she spoke, everyone in the audience forgot she was there, forgot they were in a concert hall. We were transported to the wild Irish countryside, to a land of magic and mystery, And when she finished speaking, we came back to earth with a jolt. Not the most spectacular, multi-million-dollar Hollywood movie has ever compared to that experience. It was true magic. Yet Alice suffered from nervousness too, especially in big concert halls. Gathering the audience was her way of calming herself, and also reflected her early experience as a children's librarian. Take that minute for yourself, was her advice to aspiring storytellers. Find friendly faces in the audience and decide who you're going to tell the story to. Don't be afraid to ask them to respect you by giving you their attention. Another cause of public speaking stress comes from misconceptions you may burden yourself with. That you have to be perfect, that the world will end if you miss out a point, that everyone in the audience has to love your speech. And that brings up another common fear. Fear of being judged. Relax. You can't control what anyone in your audience thinks and feels. You can only control yourself. Joe Smith may be worrying about the rattle his car gave as he limped it into the parking lot. Mary Jones may be frowning off into space because she's trying to remember if she turned the burner off on the stove before leaving. Cindy Banana may be dealing with a splitting migraine and stomach cramps, and may be more worried about getting through the next half hour than you are. None of this is a reflection on you at all. Famed opera singer Teresa Stratas had one of the most haunting voices in the world, yet she is famous for dashing off a Moscow stage because she interpreted the audience's silence and lack of reaction as disapproval, and she was absolutely devastated and unnerved as a result. Nobody told her that Moscow audiences think it is polite to applaud till the very end of the opera. So don't get into your audience's head, even if you see someone frowning or apparently text messaging, or even falling asleep. You don't know what they are expecting, thinking, or feeling. Remember, you are there simply to give them something they want. If you even get one point across that they find helpful, they'll remember your speech with pleasure, quote that point to all and sundry, and judge your presentation a success. Keep it simple. While presentations can definitely be enhanced by PowerPoint slide presentations, don't even go there at first if you're unfamiliar with setting up computer equipment or the thought causes you anxiety. Keep it as simple as possible. A good old-fashioned flip chart will help interactively reinforce your points just as well, if not better.